Welcome to Nature of Reality Radio. Interesting story as to how I got you on the show. I went down to the August 8th rally down at the Liberty Bell near Independence Hall in Philadelphia, where Robert David Steele was doing his tour, and some individual who was there agreed to buy your book, 37 Days, for me with his money. After I made the agreement that I didn't have any money with me, but I said if I could get the book, I'd read it and want you to be a guest on my show. And the guy decided to use his money to buy the book for me. Whoever you are, whatever your name is, thank you very much. You are very much appreciated. You've helped. You're certainly going to help a lot of people out, I'm sure, who choose to listen to this interview, because I'll try to make some solutions and whatnot, and get some important info out. And I read your book, Daryl, and very moving, very telling, and I can relate to it in a few ways myself. Seeing what you had to go through and such with the injustice of the justice system and all the rest of it. Before I give you the chance to the floor and tell your life story and get out any important starting points that you want to get out before I get into some nitty-gritty questions for my listeners, folks, Patreon subscribers get the whole interview. Those that do not subscribe to my Patreon account will not be able to listen to the last 35 to 40% of the interview. I will make a statement about maybe 40 minutes or so into this interview to say from this point onward, you'll have to pay me on Patreon to listen to this. It's about time that people start monetizing their work to show the universe that they are valuable and deserve to be worthy of we're just giving info out for free. So and the short abridged version interview will also be available on Cost.tv, and I encourage listeners, please listen to it on Cost.tv instead of YouTube. Just listen to YouTube for 15 seconds to give me a view count credit. And then Cost.tv, please listen to it there, because that is a blockchain channel. You can actually monetize the more people that listen. It's basically peanuts and pittance, but it's still better than nothing. So by all means do that if you listen to my show. And it's shocking to hear that Robert David Steele, he apparently is dead from the words that came out on the internet. I first saw it on Twitter on the Goldfish Report. Said a statement about that, and I clicked on several other things on the internet saying that he is dead. So this was at the very last leg of his tour. He was supposed to be in Washington, D.C. on September 6th, but that will not happen apparently. And they say he died of the dreaded virus that shall not be named, or you will be censored. Considering that so much manipulation and lies has gone on about that, I can't help but wonder if that is a lie to cover up perhaps another reason why he could have been something else could have happened. He was getting out a lot of info. He actually admitted he was $90,000 in debt from all the work he's trying to do to wake people up and do on this tour, but he didn't seem a bit phased by that. He said, I don't care how long it takes me to pay me back. I'm here to spread truth. And apparently I don't think it was the virus that shall not be named that took his life, but we'll see if anybody else has anything to say about that as the news unfolds here. So with that being said, Daryl Brooks, this is your chance to have some glory. I will shut up and put myself on mute. I don't have Alex Jones-itis. I do not interrupt my guests. So I will not interrupt you, but please, I don't take forever with your life story. You don't have to say everything that you said in your book, 37 Days, because that would take you, I'm sure, the whole hour at least. So keep it abridged, get to some points, and then I'll get to the nitty-gritty questions and solutions as well, possible solutions and such. You got the floor. Knock yourself out.
Well, thank you for allowing me to come on this show, first of all. Nature of Reality Radio. And when I met you at the Philadelphia and you read my book, I was like, okay, I hope he calls me back and want to ask some great questions. About me, I am originally from Trenton, New Jersey. Born and raised. I guess I became an activist at 12 in politics and activism at 12 years old. And And then one of the strangest things to talk about in my book, coming, being down in St. Mary's, Georgia, where my family's from, and I would go there every summer and work my cousin campaign, Artie Jones. It's called him Bubba, and he would run for county commissioner and win one, lose one, win one again, lose one again. And coming back and being involved in politics in high school and even I guess elementary and junior high school. I was on a roll after in elementary school. I was at a library, and the Trenton Library was going to close. The Trenton City Hall was going to close down the North Trenton Library. So I remember 12 years old speaking at City Council, and that was a very interesting thing. Being at City Council at 12 years old, speaking out, telling the City Council don't close down the library. So got involved in that. Junior high school class senator, college, vice president of student government, Black student president, Mercer County College, Camden County College, the first African-American student union president, then going on to council, running for council, city, but didn't succeed. Worked on campaigns. All this happened in the 20s. Being in activism, protesting in my early 20s. My first major protest was closing down of a store in the city of Trenton. We shut down a whole block, and I had to be like 22, 23 years old. That incident, the store was a Spanish store, and they would harass Black kids that come in the store. So one of the things I did, I sent some kids in there and gave them some money, and I watched this guy harass these young kids, young poor Black kids. So we organized a protest, and I basically shut down the block, and the police were out there. And next thing you know, I was a full-blown activist. So that's how I basically got started in activism. And, I just was always involved, speaking out about the police corruption, the politicians, especially the Democratic Party, just was continuously lie to the people, and politicians do nothing, more drugs than ever before, more violence than ever before, bad education. So basically I had to speak out about the politicians. Then one day I was coming home, and next thing you know, cops was at my house. And cops at my house, my mom said that they said I flashed some kids. I just came back from the Trenton Detox, which was a place where a lot of people that were on crack wanted for rehab. And I used to go to the rehab to talk to them. And then coming back from there, then heading to church at Galilee Baptist Church, and because I was in a ministry training. So, then my whole life kind of turned around after that. From 95, charged in 95, went to trial in 98, got found not guilty and guilty, and it did the 3.5 years for a crime I didn't do. It was painful, but it was reality. Going after that and just being in prison and seeing how people were suffering, and people who I knew growing up through the years in Trenton were there. And it was the most interesting thing, just saying, they was always asking, Daryl, what are you doing here? You're not a criminal. So I had to deal with a lot of the pain and suffering of my family, my children, even, to the point of having empathy, starting to have empathy for people that were in prison, especially for drug crimes. And coming home in 2000, early 2002, running for Congress, then ran for United States Senate, became the first African-American to run for Congress from Trenton, and then the first person from Trenton to run for United States Senate. And I still went on my activist road. Then in basically I was speaking out again. They couldn't stop me. They tried to stop me. Parole board tried to stop me. They tried to force me to admit to a crime that I didn't do, as because you are charged with a sex offense. They make you do counseling, and you have to admit to the counseling. And so I never admitted to the counseling because I didn't believe I didn't do it. I was a political prisoner. Then they charged me, and then they locked me up. Got out the same day. Eventually the judge threw it out. He said, "You can't. You arrest this guy for arresting him because he didn't want to admit to a crime that he went to jail for, and you're rearresting him again." So that was kind of craziest thing. And so the judge dropped the charges. Then after that, the parole kind of board members kind of left me alone after that. Then I guess 5 years ago, about 2016, early 2016, 17, they basically dropped the sex offense. I was on Megan's Law, and then I got off of Megan's Law, and basically a free man. I could do anything I want. So that was one of the most exciting periods, because all the things that the parole board and other people put me through, I finally got off. The judge really didn't believe it. And the new prosecutors really didn't believe it. So they's like, this guy, he's been a perfect citizen, and so they allowed me to get off the parole, and I did like basically 12 years of parole. So that's it. And coming home, being off parole, I decided, okay, I got to get out of the state. And so here I go to Philadelphia. And the Republican Party asked me basically to be a poll worker. And I said, sure, why not? Then after that, here we go again, politics and national stuff. And, I saw the corruption that took place at the headquarters. It was the place where in Philadelphia where the convention center, where they did the counting. And, I saw a lot of corruption, a lot of things they didn't allow us to do because I was a poll worker before. And certain things that we've seen and we did report. And so next thing you know, Corey Lewandowski comes in and talks to us, and I tell him what I've seen. It was just total corruption. So it was 2 or 3 other individuals that talked to Corey. Next thing you know, we had a press conference with the former mayor of New York City, who was one of Trump's lawyers, Mr. Giuliani. And meeting Giuliani in the room and sitting down to talk to him and Corey Lewandowski and some other lawyers. And here goes the press conference. And here goes the media coming after me again for a crime I didn't do, for speaking out for the president of the United States of America, and calling me all types of names. And it's just like they had the field day already. Basically, I've heard it all, with the media when I ran for Congress before. And to me, I was much prepared to deal with this national attention that I received. It was bad, but it was interesting because all my Tea Party and conservative friends and Trump supporters, they all stood by me. And that made me so proud because they stood by me for speaking up and telling the truth. And I would be forever grateful to a lot of my conservative Tea Party Trump supporters. I was down at CPAC and they all embraced me. And, people have been buying the book. And it's been exciting because we wrote the book in 4 weeks called Operation Warp Speed, myself and Steve Martino. And when people read the book, I get a little nervous because I talk about what happened to me, and I definitely talk about what I seen at the convention center in Philadelphia. So that's it. Now, thank you.
Thank you. And like I said, I have some questions that are worthy of asking. Now, the title of your book, 37 Days, I believe that pertains to the fact that Al Gore was given like 37 days of recount to during the 2000 election to like try to set things straight in the election, and in the end, they totally screwed him over when they decided to let boy George Bush in to the White House, and you could not help but find it ridiculous that they would go through so much trouble to try to allegedly set the record straight to uncover fraud back in 2000. But yet during this recent election between DT and Demented Joe, that there was no,
Yeah,
there was absolutely no chance for
37
anybody.
days.
Yeah. So, could you maybe, I guess, for lack of a better question, compare and contrast the what you saw in the 2000 election and the recent presidential election that led you to believe that, well, not believe, but see that times are obviously changed. They've changed. Things are different now, and things are probably more screwed up now than they were back then. And well, what are some of the hot things you want people to know about what happened recently that need to be the record straight? Look, if this gets us censored, fine, but it's going on Cost.TV too, and they don't censor. So
yeah. So I was when the Bush Gore election took place, I was locked up, but I seen the whole madness on television, and I remember I had a cell guy. He was next to me, and so we would have discussions late at night, like 1:30, 2 o'clock, because he knew I was involved in activism and politics, and we would talk about these things. And so one of the things that I noticed about the Gore and Bush, you've seen the Bush people come out and bring all the heavyweights. The father heavyweights would come out. And then you had all the Gore left kind of activism, really protesting, trying to get in, see what else. It's just Chad and all these different, all these different ways that these ballots and you look at the counting were basically, the hanging Chad. This was the craziest thing. And, how basically Gore blamed, what was the guy name? He was was he Green Party candidate? Who did he blame? What was the guy? Nader. I think he was Nader, Ralph Nader. How the Democrats blame Ralph Nader for getting in the way of the election, for losing Florida. And to me, it was one of the most interesting periods in politics, and basically having the Republican Party took the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said George Bush will be the next president of the United States. But that whole fiasco and watching the heavyweights that came in during the whole election in Florida was really interesting. And then when you look at now, you see when I was right there involved at the convention center, you saw I was out there protesting. I was with the Trump team in the front, and you had about maybe 1,000 people down in front of the convention center. 1,000 people who were supporting the Democratic Party, Antifa groups were outside, and you may have maybe 100 to 200 Trump supporters, and they circled the convention center, and that was one of the most interesting periods in time just to see that, and being a part of. To me, it was like they said, Daryl, you were part of history. Being at when Corey Lewandowski, and the thing was, I told Corey Lewandowski, I said, Corey, you need to have a protest. You need to really get people to come out. And next thing you know, there was a protest. So maybe I guess he took my took my advice and got people out there protesting. And then being at the Four Seasons uh, warehouse construction site, and basically sitting down with Giuliani and some other poll workers were there, and it was like three of us that spoke and basically told the truth with the things that we've seen, the things they did not let us do. And it was kind of surreal how Giuliani comes and sit next to me, and I'm looking at him, and I'm like, this is the mayor's mayor. This is the man. This is the guy that cleaned up, cleaned up New York violence and the drugs and took on the mob. And this is Giuliani. My thing. I'm looking at him like, am I a real? This is real. This is happening. And I tell people this, they didn't know this, but I looked outside and the backyard. I see 200-300 press corps. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I get myself into? I wanted to speak the truth because it had to be spoken. And while I'm on the phone, I got two guys, my advisors, Nate Jones Jr. and Lou Jasikoff. And so we're on the phone, and I'm talking to them, and I'm nervous because I know I'm thinking in my head, once they find out about my old charge, they're going to really put the hammer down. And both of them said, Daryl, speak the truth. I said, I know the truth, but oh my God, this is really about to go down. It just doesn't look like just state news. It doesn't look like national news. This is international. And I told Giuliani what I seen. They allow us to be 5 feet, and they had the gate up. When you're a poll worker, you can actually walk around and watch them count. They didn't do that. They didn't allow us to do that. They were bringing in ballots when we said, and they said they were closing the office where they counting it. They was bringing in more ballots. Then they moved their operations back. And so we had binoculars and we could see some things. And a lot of these individuals who were counting the ballots, they were like temp workers. They wasn't really looking at the numbers, looking at the people, how many people were voting. They didn't look at the names. They were just pushing it through, just pushing and pushing. And the ballots would come in and they were just counting them without checking names, it was just like a machine, just pushing, making sure they got the ballots, making sure all these ballots come in. They didn't really check at all. And that was the thing. It's like, okay, why aren't they checking? Why aren't they doing a visual check? And then you had other, how can I say, you had election board people. They have their badges. And, we were like, okay, why are they coming in with bags in their hand? Why are they coming in with election bags? And we asked them, well, what's in these bags? They would not tell us. Well, come on. This was intentionally. My family down in St. Mary's, Georgia would say, if you find a turtle on the fence post, it didn't get there by accident. This was intentionally something that the Philadelphia Convention Center and the Philadelphia, basically the Convention Center, the Philadelphia workers, the Philadelphia Election Board, they did this intentionally. They knew what they was doing. And, tell people this, it's proven that Will Smith's father voted. Will Smith's father been dead for at least, 4 or 5 years now. How do all these people who are dying get to vote? So basically at the convention, we met at the construction site. They picked me up. We went there. We did the press conference, and that's history. I didn't think I would get the backlash like I did, but it was the Trenton politicians that were upset with me because I was supporting the president, and I was on national television. So they hated that. And they're the ones that basically outed me about my past. That's it.
Yeah, thank you. Very intriguing, very interesting. And a lot of people are going to say that Trump may have been compromised having Giuliani as his attorney. The numbers 911 may have something to do with that. I don't think we need to really get into what that's about. People can draw their conclusions about that. Although I will say Giuliani, he does seem like he's not the if he was a corrupt politician back in the day, he seems to want to right the ship a little bit now, and there's some things he just doesn't have the guts to say on live television in front of the world about what he knows. But I think he may want to right the ship again. And if he I remember David Icke in one of his presentations actually suggesting that he's under demonic possession. Well, maybe the demons are out of him now, if that makes sense of why he's changed his attitude a little bit. So the fact that they raided his apartment to try to like silence him and whatnot, that leads me to believe there's something maybe a little more credible about him than we think. But anyhow, I'd like to switch gears for just a moment here. Some of the events that you've been to, conferences and such, you mentioned CPAC. Now, maybe you can enlighten me on that, because that's a conference that I've thought about going to, but I don't know if I'd be a good fit. I mean, it stands for Conservative Political Action Conference, but regardless of being conservative, it's basically, to a great extent, founding father ideology. I mean, when you think of the opposite of conservative as a liberal, the real true liberal is not the Antifa or Black Lives Matter protester who's brainwashed that we see nowadays. A true liberal would be what Thomas Jefferson was like. That's what a liberalism is supposed to be about. Conservatism, well, I think the appropriate way of looking at conservatives is narrow-minded, maybe. Like the people that go to the Conservative Political Action Conference, they are believe in founding father ideology, but like the thing that makes them not be in the Thomas Jefferson camp is that Jefferson was broadly open-minded, liberal-minded. And the conservatives are not. And I have been very open-minded about so many things. I mean, I just mentioned something about demonic possession. You'll never hear conservatives talk about that, because that's a little too far out of their realm. So for people that may want to consider going to a CPAC conference in the future, is it a conference for open-minded people to go to? I mean, should you keep your mouth shut about open-minded things if you decide to go there and just stick to
you can... It's I think CPAC started probably during the Reagan years, I believe. So it was a more Reagan type start around that time. President Reagan, CPAC started. That's what, 80? He was president in 80, 81, 80. So I met a lot of people at CPAC. A lot of CPAC was it's to me, I go there to network. I don't go to a lot of the presentations. I go to network, talk to people. Like I said, I have my book. This is my fourth CPAC. So my thing is to network, talk to people, socialize, get involved in what's happening. And so it's a pretty a good conference, and you have people there who are open minded. This is probably the most diverse CPAC. In the history of CPAC, the most diverse CPAC I've ever seen.
All right. Now, another group that you mentioned in your book that you had some time with, the Tea Party. A couple of things to put a note here. First of all, the American Revolution mythology behind this. I remember Fritz Springmeier, when I interviewed him, he actually said the mythology about the American Revolution has got the Boston Tea Party all wrong. It was actually a criminal act done by Freemasons. It was not a act of patriotism or protest against the crown, as the textbooks lead you to believe. And if you went back in time and actually asked somebody about the Boston Tea Party, they wouldn't know anything about it unless they had connections to the Freemasonic lodges who were trying to protest the British East India Company and such, because they were in competition with them, among other things. But that aside, the Tea Party, they're all founding father ideology, and I am too. But I got a crazy story to tell you. I decided to go down to the Tea Party conference. It was summer of 2018. It was in Washington, D.C. I went down there, and shortly after I got there, it was kind of a bad first impression though, because I was really, really thirsty. Hadn't had anything to drink in a little while. I just had a fish lunch at the Amtrak station, and I was like, "Oh, come on, where's the water? You guys are supposed to have water out for people. You don't have it." And that was kind of a bad first impression anyway. But aside from that, I just wanted to have a good time there and everything. But then people, one of the heads of that conference came up to me and asked me, "Why did you come here?" And I was like, "You say that like you don't want me here." And he told me that he checked my social media, and he has seen all kinds of things on my social media that are far out things that nobody in the Tea Party would talk about. And he was kind of suggesting maybe I'm an infiltrator or something that doesn't really belong there. And but I assured him I wasn't. I tried to assure him I was a diehard American patriot, but he said, "I'm sorry, you're not a good fit." And then he handed me $250 and said, "Here's your refund. Now beat it." And that hit me like a ton of bricks to see that I'm getting kicked out of this conference simply because one of the people there didn't think I was a good fit because the things I talk about on my social media are too far out for what the Tea Party talks about. So is that kind of what to be expected of these guys, or was that maybe just an outlier event?
Well, one of the things for me is about why I joined the Tea Party movement, because I went to college for politics and activism. So when I came home in the city of Trenton, the same enemies were still in office, were still around. And the enemies was the Democratic Party in the city of Trenton. And so I was so upset because I couldn't get involved. And I had a friend in the libertarian movement, Lou Jasikoff, so he got me involved. And that kind of the Ron Paul movement and the Tea Party movement, I got involved with them. And so they embraced me. And, listen, as an African-American, inner city, people just like say, how can I join the Tea Party? How would I be a part of the Tea Party movement? Because the Democratic Party pushed me away, So I like talking about state issues, national issues, world issues. And where I'm from, and the politicians are very mediocre. Basketball, let's talk about basketball. Let's talk about sports. Let's have a good time. And that's not me. So when the Tea Party people embraced me, and there was some who was skeptical, who's this black guy, Daryl, and he's from the inner city, and I heard he has a criminal record. But once they got to know me, once they after 4 or 5 months sitting at a conference speaking, they allowed me to speak, and we going out to dinner with each other, going to different types of events. They embraced me, and they knew about what happened to me, and so that was one of the most exciting things. Here I'm with a group that has embraced me, supported me, and when it came down, when they arrested me that time for parole, arrested me for not admitting to the crime, to the charge, they called down to the parole and said, "We're having a protest. We're going to shut you down." That was like when I seen how the parole was so afraid of these Tea Party people said, "We're coming down to protest against what they're doing to me," and the fear that they had. And I mean, that right there showed me that I'm dealing with the right type of people for my situation that embraced me. When the inner city African-American groups didn't embrace me, the preachers didn't embrace me. There was other activists. They called themselves activists and black activists. And, they're the top, but they turned their back on me. When I called them, they hung up on me. So I had to find a group who had enough of strength and courage to support me. And the Tea Party group was that group. Yep.
I still support them, still subscribe to their emails in spite of that unfortunate conference thing that happened to me. Speaking of conferences, there was a conference that I wanted to go to, but it never happened because of the pandemic back in this was in May. It was May of 2020. It was the Libertarian National Convention that was supposed to happen in the Austin, Texas area, and that never went to that. But the Libertarian Party, if there is one political party that I would certainly, if I had to choose a political party to be affiliated with, it would have to be that one. All the things that they stand for are definitely worth standing for. But at the state and local, at the government level, you have to wonder, even though they are a great party, do they, for all intents and purposes, have any sort of a chance in this two-party system, which is in many ways banker controlled? But do the libertarians have a chance, I guess, is the best question I can ask.
I guess libertarians are, they were known back in, I guess, the 80s and the 90s as backwoods campaigners, get backwoods, people in the woods, who are running for office, coming out of the dark, running for office, and and that's what they were viewed as. Now there's a different libertarian party. I think you have young people who are speaking out, and young people who are tired of the lies and the corruption, and they're pushing their agenda. For me, I was a part of the Libertarian Party for a while. Matter of fact, I've gotten 7 candidates from Senate to Congress, Libertarian, on the ballot in New Jersey, because I was a professional signature. I got Gary Johnson on the ballot in New Jersey. It was me, Daryl Brooks. And so the Libertarian Party paid me to get Gary Johnson on the ballot. And I got him, I think it was 900 or close to, or 1,000 signatures in New Jersey. So, interesting.
Yeah, yes, definitely a political party I'll keep my eyes on and consider going to their events in the future. Now, you've had some unfortunate experiences regarding the stuff that goes on in the ghetto neighborhoods of Trenton. Like you mentioned in your book, the guy who his life depended on him being a prominent crack dealer. So anybody that stood in the way of his ability to sell, he was going to try to set up or do bad things to, and that's kind of what happened to you. It's a shame that the world has to go like this, where a person who decides to, as a last resort, make a living off of selling drugs cannot help but continue, but do terrible things to other people simply because they stand in the way of their business. I mean, a true business person, regardless of what they're selling, you'll think, I'm just going to stay here and sell and advertise and everything should be okay. I don't have to be a thorn in anybody's side to try to solicit my products. But then when someone poses a threat, they actually need to go as far as setting them up. This doesn't happen with any other products, but it happens in the world of street drugs.
It happened to me.
So yeah, it happened to you. So anything to say about it, to elaborate on it?
So yeah, I talk about what happened to me, and it has two sides. We're talking about a corrupt family of drug dealers, and the father and the brothers used 2 children, their niece and nieces and child, to lie and say, here's a 6'5" guy. He decides to. I decided to drop my pants in broad daylight to my ankles with a bottle of brandy in my hand, and between 5 and 6, and start masturbating in the street. Now, I've never ever been accused of anything. At the time, I didn't even drink brandy. Liquor wasn't my thing. So I'm just going to decide it's between going to the Trenton rehab and then going to the church to do ministers training. I decide I'm going to drop my pants and start jerking off in broad daylight. And I wouldn't do it at all, but in broad daylight, and while I'm drinking brandy at the same time. That's what these kids said. And so, but what happened, what was more disturbing to me is the police officers. Everybody watched Law and Order. The police officers, they took these kids' words. They didn't knock on any doors. They didn't ask anybody see anything. They just took these kids' words. And also disturbing was the prosecutor. She didn't find this funny that, here's a man who's basically 24 years old, 25, never committed crimes, doing the right thing. He's just going to decide, drop pants and start masturbating in broad daylight in front of a police mini station that was open. But the cops didn't see nothing. Nobody else saw anything. And, but you talk about corrupt drug dealers, but corrupt politicians that push this. And Mayor Doug Palmer, corrupt police officers that are totally corrupt. They're corrupt. And a corrupt prosecutor. To me, that whole system is corrupt. But also, it's the issues of also activism to allow another activist to go to jail, and the people and other group leaders didn't say anything about it, didn't support me. Matter of fact, they wanted me to go to jail because I was getting too popular. Here I'm 23, 22, 24, making the newspapers, being on the television, doing radio. You would think that they would surround me and then embrace me and speak up, but they did nothing. Because a lot of the politicians, a lot of the activists, police officers, it's like one big octopus. They all are so connected. And I lost that battle. And one of the things also is the fact that I didn't, that I hurt myself in a way where, I didn't think that the prosecutors would believe this because it was foolishness. I didn't think I was going to. I just thought, well, the prosecutors, once they see what happened, they'll throw it out because it's foolishness. Because I didn't understand the law myself at the time. I'm talking about I'm 23, 24 years old. The law wasn't my thing. So I didn't take it seriously. And next thing you know, they indicted me. So it took the basically charge in 94, 95, went to trial in 98, got found not guilty and guilty. So.
Yeah, it's very sad that that's the way it has to go. Now another issue in the whole drug world is how can we actually obey common law without society falling apart as a result of drug addicts doing what they can to support their habit. Now, what am I talking about here? Well, if you were to go by a strict interpretation of common law, which is when the founding fathers founded this country, they decided the best form of law to use would be the common law, and that it, contrary to what Wikipedia and all the lawyers nowadays tell us, common law is not law made by judges. It is law of the Magna Carta as it existed in its original form in 1215, when the barons and other nobles rebelled against the British crown. And the common law basically said in order for one to be punished for their actions, they can basically do whatever they want unless they cause and or intend to cause harm to another person or property through negligence or deliberate intent. Now, by that standard, someone who shoots heroin up in the middle of a public park in front of hundreds of people is not actually committing a crime, because they're only being destructive to themselves and are not hurting anyone in the process. However, if you try to do that in this day and age, the park rangers will call the police and you'll go to jail and face some charges that are not law, but are what is considered to be public policy. Yes, the things that we call laws, statutes, codes, and ordinances are not laws. They're what is considered to be public policy. And they are written anytime that you're convicted of, or I should say, accused of being committing some infraction that there's no harm or intent to cause harm through negligence or deliberate intent. What they are actually doing is charging you while acting in a commercial capacity over which there exists government regulatory authority, because where there's commerce, there's a contract. Where there's law, there's a contract. So there's regulatory authority, and and they count on you not noticing that the law is written in such a way with words having specific legal definitions to not object to that at trial, so they can charge you with a commercial infraction when you really did not commit a crime because, well, you didn't harm anyone other than yourself, which is harming yourself is not a crime. So, well, that raises the question, all these people that have been convicted of victimless drug crimes, don't they deserve to have their record expunged and be released from prison? Oh, okay, fair enough. But that also raises the question, how can we allow for drugs to be legal when many people fear that's just going to lead to addiction and cause there to be anarchy and chaos in the streets and everything? I know what drugs can do to people. I had a very close friend die of heroin overdose, and miss her so much I had a psychic channel her in a session that I wanted to speak to her that badly. So I see what it does to people. You see what it does to people. And to complicate this even further, you got the fact that the government, the CIA in particular, Michael Ruppert, the late Michael Ruppert, knows all about how the CIA ships drugs into America. And in order to make the war on drugs a complete and total farce, a phony war, they're the ones who criminalize it because they want to profit off it. How can you possibly, I guess, for lack of a better question, expect to follow common law and let people not get punished for being destructive with drugs without harming anyone, when everybody fears that letting people do whatever they want with drugs will cause society to fall apart and descend into?
Well, if you look at what's happening in Philadelphia, I mean, look at Philadelphia, look at Chicago. Society has it's a madhouse. It's the more violence than ever before. And my thing is that people who have used heroin have a problem, a serious problem. It's a health issue. It shouldn't be criminalized. And now people are seeing a light. Before, you go to jail, you do time, you get a record, you can't get jobs. If you even change the way let's say you change, you've been caught using heroin 10 years ago, and now you change your life around. You're off you're not ill and sick anymore, and you go find a job, and they do your background check, and they see this issue pop up. So you get hot, you can't get hired, or you get fired. I've been in a situation plenty of times, but not with the heroin, but with my charge. I had to suffer years, and so I understand. When you have former heroin abusers and they was ill and they got charged, and now they can't get jobs, take care of themselves and their family. So these things, they're changing now. You got different types of prosecutors, politicians, judges. And so people are now changing who are drug users. I think society has starting to have more empathy towards people that were using drugs. Philadelphia is a terrible area. They have some terrible areas. If you ever jump on the L, you see the people nodding off, high on heroin, and I'm just so heartbroken when I see a young person that's high on heroin. But I'm also heartbroken when I see these young kids getting shot, getting killed, getting murdered, men, women, and children, boys dying at 10, 12 years old, 17 years old, haven't even finished high school. We have a serious problem in America, and we haven't dealt with the issue of love towards each other. and stopping the violence that has destroyed lives, continuously lives. And so, you know, we need, for me, I talk about on my show and on Fire Show, we have to have empathy. We have to love each other, but we have to have better training. You know, you got kids graduating from 12th grade can barely read and write from these schools in Philadelphia, all over the country. You know, what types of jobs are they going to get? You know, the skills that they have. What skills? They have Walmart skills. They have Amazon skills. That's it. They can work at McDonald's and Target. They can spend their life at these type service worker jobs, but they can't do science, mathematics jobs. You know, and some people, because they have the bad education and lack of morals, that's a big issue. Listen, our grandparents, they wasn't highly educated, but they had that morally understanding that, you know, there's certain things that they were not going to do. Now we have a generation of people who just, whether they're inner city, suburb, black or white, they just do whatever makes them feel good. You know, they don't care about what happens to other people, how other people are going to suffer. And so we have a big problem. Everything is fixable. And I mean, that's one of the things I talked about my campaign team. I am running for Congress in the 3rd District against Dwight Evans. I'm running for the GOP nomination. So there's so many things that have to be talked about. And listen, we can win this battle. But the problem is that we are too afraid to step up. We fear, we just fear the unknown. We fear evil. That's it.
All right. Okay, this is probably the latest I've got into a show before making the statement that from this point onward, everybody who wants to listen to the rest of this interview will have to pay me on Patreon to be able to listen to it. Usually I do that about 45 minutes in the show. Now it's been about 50 minutes into the show. I guess we can go for another 15 minutes at most.